system even existed. Those stars exploded, scattered their guts across the galaxy, and eventually some of that dust come together into a planet, then into oceans, then into cells, then into you. You are, quite literally, reheated star material that got arranged into a shape that can ask questions about itself. Sit with that. So if you're made of ancient star matter, where were you before you were born? Not your atoms. They were floating around doing star stuff for billions of years. I mean you. The thing reading this sentence right now, the awareness behind your eyes. Here's the uncomfortable answer physics gives us, and it's simpler than any religion or philosophy has ever managed. You weren't anywhere, not in a waiting room, not floating in some cosmic lobby, not asleep in the void counting down until your turn. There was no you to be anywhere, because you is not a thing that exists independently of the process that creates it. You are what happens when a very specific, very complicated arrangement of matter starts running. Before that arrangement existed, there was nothing running, so there was nothing to locate. Now here's the pattern interrupt, because I know what you're thinking. That sounds like I just described death too, and you're right. That's the entire point. The state you were in before birth and the state you'll be in after death, physically, are identical. No brain activity, no memory, no experience, no waiting, zero difference. And yet one of those states we treat as peaceful and forgettable, and the other one keeps people up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. That asymmetry isn't physics, that's psychology. Your brain is a machine built by evolution to protect itself, so it panics at the thought of ending, but it has zero programmed fear about a beginning it never experienced. Same darkness, completely different marketing. Let's slow down and actually build this properly, because you didn't exist is true, but it's not satisfying on its own. We need to talk about time itself, because that's really what's messing with your head here. Here's a simple real-life example. Think about a river. You can point to the river flowing past a bridge, but the river isn't a fixed object. It's a process. The water molecules in it right now are completely different from the water molecules that were there yesterday. The river persists as a pattern, not as a specific chunk of matter. You are the exact same kind of thing. Not a fixed object that got placed into existence, but a pattern, a process that started running at a certain point and will eventually stop. Before the river existed at that spot, there was just ground, not river waiting, just ground, doing ground things, completely indifferent to the fact that one day water would carve a path through it. That's what pre-birth you was, not a soul in a waiting room, just atoms, doing atom things. Completely indifferent to the fact that one day they'd be arranged into something that could feel anxious about not existing yet. Now, here's the twist for the middle of the video, the part that flips the whole conversation. We think of time as a hallway, past behind you, future ahead of you, and you're a fixed point walking down the middle of it. But physicists who study something called the block universe think about time completely differently. In this model, past, present, and future all exist together, the same way every page of a book exists at once, even though you're only reading one page right now. Under this view, before you were born isn't a place you weren't yet. It's simply a different page. Your birth isn't the start of your existence popping into being from nothing. It's the specific page in the book where the pattern called you begins printing, and death is the page where the printing stops. The book itself, the block of space-time, contains it all simultaneously. That reframes the entire question. You're not asking, where was I before the book started? You're asking, why does this particular chapter feel like the whole story? And the honest answer is, it doesn't need to be the whole story to matter. A chapter is still real. A chapter still happened. Every sentence in it still counts, even though there were chapters before it, and there will be chapters after it that don't include you. Let's bring in entropy for a second, because this is where it gets almost poetic. The reason time even has a direction. The reason we remember the past and not the future. The reason eggs don't unscramble themselves comes down to entropy, the universal tendency for things to move from order to disorder. Your birth was a local temporary act of the universe pushing against that tendency, gathering scattered atoms into an incredibly ordered, incredibly complex structure capable of thought. Your death will be entropy winning that fight, eventually, the way it wins every fight. But here's the thing, almost nobody says out loud. The fact that entropy always wins eventually doesn't erase the fact that for one stretch of cosmic time, in one specific corner of one specific galaxy, ought to beat the odds hard enough to produce something that could sit here and wonder about its own existence. That's not nothing. That's actually one of the rarest things the universe does. Now let's circle back to that number I told you to keep in your pocket. 13.8 billion. That's roughly how old the universe is. For 13.8 billion years, give or take, there was no you, no experience, no perspective, no fear, no joy, nothing missing because there was no one to miss anything. And then, for somewhere between 70 and 90 years, if you're lucky, there's a flicker. A pattern assembles itself out of old stardust, opens its eyes, and starts asking where it came from. Then the flicker ends, and the atoms go back to doing atom things, eventually becoming part of soil or trees or someone else's bones, or maybe even a future star. You don't return to nothing. You were never anything other than a temporary arrangement of things that already existed, briefly organized into a shape smart enough to be scared of its own ending. Here's the climax. The big reveal this whole video has been building toward. The fear of not existing assumes there's a version of you sitting somewhere experiencing the absence. But absence isn't experienced. Nobody has ever felt non-existence. Not for 1 second. Not before birth and not after death. Because feeling requires the very pattern that isn't there. You have already, personally, individually, survived 13.8 billion years of non-existence without a single moment of discomfort, because there was no you present to be uncomfortable. Whatever comes after death is, by definition, going to be exactly as peaceful as everything that came before you were born. You've already done the not existing part. You did it perfectly. For billions of years, you're basically a professional at it. And that's the physics answer to a question philosophy and religion have argued about forever. Not a comforting story, not a guess, just a mirror. Whatever you weren't afraid of before you were born is exactly what you don't need to be afraid of after. The only actual miracle in the whole story is the part in between, the flicker, the chapter, the page in the book where the pattern runs and gets to look around and ask questions like this one. That's the part worth paying attention to. So here's what I want you to do with this. Stop spending energy dreading an ending that will feel exactly like a beginning you already survived, and put that energy into the flicker you're in right now. If this made you see time differently, hit like so more people see it. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of physics that actually messes with your head in a good way. And drop a comment telling me what page of the book you're on right now. See you in the next one. Quick question before we start. Not where you're going when you die.